Welcome to Dementia-Friendly Prince George's County MD Northern Sector webinar series for caregivers. Today's topic is Senior Driver Safety and Mobility, sponsored by Prince George's County Government and the Department of Family Services.
All right, without any further ado, it is my pleasure to welcome Kurt Gray from KEG Consulting. Thanks, Kurt.
Of course, thank you, and it's great to be with you guys tonight. Again, my name is Kurt Gray. I'm the principal of KEG Consulting and former director of driver education and training for AAA Club Alliance. Just a little bit about me. I spent 29 years at AAA, and for the past 17 years, I led their driver education and training department. That's where we offered, I had a pretty sizable team. We offered novice and post-novice driver safety and education programs for teens, to older drivers, and everyone in between. So I have 20 years of traffic safety experience, done corporate training workshops, driver skills assessments, instructor trainings, safety presentations, the whole gamut. Right now, I collaborate with individuals and organizations to provide industry-leading driver safety solutions and try to offer a comprehensive approach to risk management. So my mission at my consulting firm is to motivate motorists to improve attitudes about driving while producing actionable ways to enhance driving skills that reduce risk behind the wheel. What are we talking about tonight? Well, we've got some things we're going to cover. We're going to talk about some AAA Foundation for Traffic Safety research related to older drivers, and some of those topics are, concerns for driving cessation, self-regulation, how falls impact seniors. We're going to highlight some high-risk driving scenarios for older drivers, and we're going to talk about some common errors that older drivers tend to make, particularly in intersections. We'll talk about driver skills assessments and evaluations and sort of what they are, why you should consider it, and sort of how they work. And we're going to review some safe driving resources that I find pretty useful for folks that I work with. And then lastly, we'll talk about planning for driving retirement. And we'll also look at some red flags to look for when your aging loved ones perhaps should stop driving. All right, so we have two people here. We have Michelle on the left. She's 19, and she recently received her license. She's pretty inexperienced, but her hearing, her sight, and her reflexes are sharp. And then on the right, we have Margaret. She's 75. She has many years of driving experience, but her vision is degrading. Her mobility is not what it used to be. So who do you think is the safer driver? Well, statistically, if you want to be safe, you're going to pick Margaret, right? You're going to pick the older driver on the right, and she is statistically safer than younger drivers. And, the bottom line is nothing can replace years of experience when it comes to driving. But we also have to acknowledge that age can create obstacles that make driving more challenging. And these issues are common, but sometimes difficult or embarrassing for people to address. So at a high level, right, drivers in their 70s crash about the same rate as drivers in their 30s. Drivers in their mid-80s have lower crash rates than drivers in their early 20s. And drivers in their 80s have a per mile crash rates about half of those as teenagers. So the number of birthdays you have doesn't determine your medical fitness to drive. That's the bottom line. Drivers age 16 to 17 continue to have the highest crash rates and injuries to themselves and others, and deaths of others in crashes, which they're allowed. I mean, that's the leading cause of death for young people is automobile crashes. Drivers age 80 and older have highest crash rates of death. And the reason for that is as you age, your body is just not as strong as it used to be. And frail bodies have a difficult time sustaining the impacts of crash forces. So you're more likely to be susceptible to succumb to your injuries when you're older. Population growth, looking at older drivers by the numbers. We know older adults are the fastest growing population, and that's true in many parts of the world, not just the US. But of course, that means more older drivers and their implications in that trend for safety and mobility. Many of you may have heard the term silver tsunami. That's every day for the next several years. 10,000 people turn age 65. That's a lot of people. And that means there are going to be a lot of family members out there struggling with mobility of their loved ones as they age. It's an issue, and it's going to continue to grow as people age. So this chart shows us who's most at risk in crashes involving older drivers. Well, the people most likely to be killed in crashes involving older drivers are, unfortunately, the older drivers themselves, or they're equally as old passengers. You know, we talked about it. These drivers are just far less likely to kill people in crashes, but they're far more likely to succumb to their injuries as a result of the crash itself. So here are 5 high-risk driving scenarios for older drivers. This information comes from NHTSA, and these 5 scenarios they found that older drivers were overrepresented in these. And you'll notice a trend here. So the first one is turning left at an intersection with a stop sign where cross traffic doesn't stop. Intersections in general are just dangerous places. But their seniors tend to be overrepresented in these types of crashes. The second one is turning left across oncoming traffic. So we call this an unprotected left turn. So you have the green light, but you have to yield to oncoming traffic. Number 3 is turning right at an intersection controlled by a yield sign to merge with traffic coming at 40 to 50 miles per hour. Might start to see a trend here. Left turn, merging, and then merging onto a limited access highway with a ramp or acceleration lane controlled by a yield sign. And then the last one, changing lanes on a multi-lane roadway, 4 lanes or more. So, you know, it shows us older drivers are generally safer drivers, but age-related decline can increase difficulty conducting certain driving maneuvers, such as left turns and intersection negotiations. These are 4 common errors that older drivers tend to make before an intersection crash. So, you know, these are telling you the things that are not happening well. So not noticing potential conflict or traffic signs or signals, sort of misjudging gaps when crossing traffic. And I might add there that the length of time to clear the intersection increases as we age. It may take, say, for example, it may take me 2 seconds to clear an intersection, 2 or 3 seconds, and it may take an older driver maybe 4 to 5 seconds. And when it takes you longer to clear the intersection, your risk exposure is higher. It means you're exposing yourself to that situation for a much longer time, and the misjudging of the gap can potentially cause conflict. Sort of moving or stopping the vehicle too slowly. And then the last one is conducting a visual search poorly. So when I say older drivers, I'm really talking about persons age 65 and older. And when we look at sort of medications, you know, 1 in 5 older drivers use medications that can potentially impair their driving. It's a question I always ask when I do an assessment. Most people say no, but the reality is they're not even sure. 50% of older adults report using 7 or more medications. So there's a growing population of older drivers who use multiple medications and likely don't realize the impact of those scripts on their driving. So the research shows that the more medications an older driver takes, the more likely they are to use an inappropriate medication that can potentially cause sort of impairment. So we're talking about, you know, this study looks at what happens when we hang up the keys. So here are some potential concerns for driving cessation. The study, overall driving cessation almost doubled the risk of depression It's not, hanging up the keys is not an easy thing. And we also learned that driving cessation was associated with a 51% in the reduction of your size of your social networks, your friends, your relatives. So think about that. If half of your social circle was reduced, how would that impact your life or your mental well-being? So in general, former drivers had accelerated cognitive decline. So former drivers who hung up the keys, were nearly 5 times as likely as current drivers to be admitted to long-term care facilities. So we know we're not going to drive forever. It's not something that most people even think about, but there are some impacts to driving cessation that has to be taken into consideration. Then we'll look at self-regulation. This study of driving in older drivers had 3 types of self-regulation. One is strategic, so that would be sort of deciding to not take up a trip at all or avoiding challenging driving situations. Perhaps you don't like driving at night or driving in inclement weather. Those are strategic decisions. And then we have tactical sort of decisions where you think about the maneuvers that you're going to make in traffic and the decisions about sort of driving distractions. And maybe, for example, you're going to avoid unprotected left turns and make 3 right turns instead. Those are tactical decisions. And then the last one is about a life goal, right? That would be choosing where to live in relation to common destinations, or sort of what kind of car to buy and what the safety features might be in consideration of that purchase decision. We also learned that older women tend to self-regulate more than men. There's really no surprise there. And self-regulation tends to increase with age. So we'll talk a little bit about the driving skills evaluation. So they're basically professional driving assessments fall into 2 types of categories. There's a professional skills evaluation and there's a clinical sort of assessment. So a driving skills evaluation typically includes an in-car evaluation of your abilities and a recommendation on any further specialized driver training that might be needed. Clinical assessments are used to really identify underlying medical conditions of any driving performance deficits and offer ways to sort of address those, and so we can keep driving sort of as a safe option. So they may sound similar, but they're really distinctly different. A lot of people use assessments to sort of just as a checkup mechanism. But sometimes there are health issues that, that may be some concerns that we need to sort of address. So here are some considerations for having an assessment. And, sometimes it's just, you're just concerned that your skills may have diminished. But really it's number 2 that I find is really the most prominent sort of consideration. It's either your friends or your family have real concerns that you may not be fit to drive. So that's where I find that the majority of requests for my services tend to come in. But then again, you may have also had recent increase in near misses or minor fender benders, or perhaps you've taken an informal assessment, maybe a written assessment or a computer-based assessment, and you didn't do so well, and perhaps it's leading to sort of a next step. So when we talk about the components of a skills assessment, now this is sort of what my service looks like. I can't speak for other skills evaluations because I know that many are not as comprehensive, but obviously the more components one has, the more comprehensive assessment it is, probably the better assessment results you're going to get. So, a pre-screen questionnaire is always good to make sure that, that this is the right service for the person. If someone is coming and they have severe, Parkinson's disease, or maybe had a severe stroke, those should be referred to a clinical assessment. So that's the purpose of the pre-screen questionnaire, is to make sure you got the right person and the right service matching up. Then we offer a cognitive, a physical, and a vision assessment. So the cognitive assessment really looks at executive function and planning and foresight, and making sure that there's enough executive functions and planning and foresight needed to drive safely. The physical is just really a test to make sure that there's strength and flexibility and coordination. And then the visual is really just a visual acuity check to make sure you're meeting the minimum state requirements on your vision. Car fit, car fit is something that we added. We find that older drivers really benefit from that program. It's a safety program that focuses on safety, comfort, and fit, and make sure people are properly seated in their vehicle for maximum comfort and safety. Oftentimes drivers are sitting too close to the steering wheel, or perhaps their mirrors aren't properly adjusted, or maybe they're sitting too low in their seat and they don't have adequate line of sight out the windshield. So all of those adjustments we'll make while we're going over a 12-point check. And then at the end, then next we have the assessment itself, right? That's the big piece of this. Where we do an in-car evaluation and assessment of your skills on a route that you drive and that you're familiar with, and you're driving your own vehicle, and perhaps we're going to the pharmacy or the grocery store or the gym or places that you might normally go. We take a ride, do those trips, and we'll park and come back, and then we'll do a debrief, and we'll talk about the evaluation results and findings, and we'll talk about recommendations and next steps if those are appropriate. Then after a day or so, you'll get a written recap of all of those recommendations in written form. So it's never too early to start to plan for driving retirement. This is a conversation that I have at the end of every skills assessment, and it's to learn how to spend a day or two not driving or considering other forms of transportation to get where you need to go. Friends, family, Uber, Lyft, Metro Access, other senior transportation services should be investigated and introduced sort of early, before the time to stop driving actually gets here. The sooner drivers start to think about and use other forms of transportation, the easier that transition will be when the time comes. NIH has put out research that drivers can expect to outlive their ability to drive by 6 to 10 years. That's 6 years on average for men, 10 years on average for women. So, if you're in your 90s and you're still driving, I don't doubt that you probably got a lot more living to do, but statistically, you probably don't have a lot more driving to do. So planning for retirement of driving is something we have to do, just like we plan to retire from our careers. So we talked a little bit about CarFit. This is a free community-based education program that AAA, AARP, and the American Occupational Therapy Association created. It was developed in 2005, and they do these on a large scale. So they'll promote these, and they often do them at senior centers or locations where they have a lot of parking lot space. The one I do is a one-on-one assessment. These are sort of drive up checkpoints where you drive through a station and you'll meet with someone, and they'll come up to your car and sort of make the adjustments, and you'll move on to another station and do something else. They're really beneficial. A lot of older drivers have difficulty. They're not sure of their steering wheel, how it moves, the direction it moves, and the adjustments that you make after a car fit can absolutely help keep you safe, make driving more comfortable, and make it a lot safer. Here's a little short video on the CarFit program itself.
People over the age of 65 are the fastest growing population in the United States. By 2030, more than 70 million Americans will be 65 or older. With age comes natural changes to vision, information processing, flexibility, and the speed of reflexes. And vehicles are changing too, with the addition of more safety features that require adjustment to find the safest fit.
CarFit is a community-based educational program for older drivers focused on safety, comfort, and fit. CARFIT was created in 2006, and it was a joint collaboration between AAA, AARP, and the American Occupational Therapy Association.
CARFIT is designed to operate successfully in a variety of locations in the community. It's an education program that can be offered in conjunction with AAA or AARP driver safety courses, anywhere that we can establish a place to have a community education event. Or we can have our trained technicians also offer CARFIT as a one-to-one education as well. At a CARFIT event, a driver pulls up in their own vehicle and they're able to assess their fit. We provide education, we show them how things work, and we provide some community education, some resources that they might find useful. The technicians at CARFIT follow a 12-point checklist that guides them through the main safety features in the vehicle, takes 20 minutes, and off they go.
CARFIT events are led by volunteer event coordinators who supervise trained CARFIT technicians, occupational therapists, or driver rehabilitation specialists. CARFIT provides an educational experience. This can prompt a conversation about the steps the driver can take to make him or herself more safe and comfortable in their own vehicle.
The CARFIT partners thank all of our volunteers for their service.
All right, so next we're going to talk about seniors and falls. So this study highlights how falls impact driving. I use a CDC sheet that lists the top 10 unintentional causes of death. And for drivers age 65 and older, falls rank number 1, automobile crashes rank number 2. So, we learned that an older adult who had fallen is 40% more likely to be involved in another crash compared to someone who was not falling. That's significant. Once a person has a serious fall, obviously the fear of falling again increases. This could lead to limited physical activity. And we know the old saying, use it or lose it is very true. So getting up and moving increases muscle strength and muscle memory. So it's important. But if that fear is there of falling again, many may choose to not move around as much. So falls can impact driving in 3 ways, right? Physical injury, obviously, limits your ability to use the steering wheel, the brake pedals, or perform other essential driving maneuvers. For example, you injure your wrists. Those things are definitely going to impact driving. 2 is your reduced functional ability. The learned fear of falling leads to more limited physical activity. And then 3 is like a heightened self-awareness of age-related changes. The fear of injury sort of just may lead to self-restricting behaviors, like reduced mileage and day driving. That's okay. But one of the biggest takeaways here is once a person has a serious fall, sort of the fear of falling again increases. So getting up, moving around, creating muscle strength and muscle memory is so important. So AAA has a very good brochure that we make available, and it's available online through just a simple Google search. I think you can get it that way. It's flexibility fitness training for better driving. I give anyone that has an assessment with me, I make sure they get a copy of this because they're really good exercises to help improve flexibility as it relates to driving. And in addition to having your vision and hearing checked annually, exercise is also very important. Regular strength and flexibility exercises can absolutely help improve your reflexes and range of motion. It can ease pain and stiffness and help you maintain enough strength to handle a car. It's another good resource here. It's a self-rating tool. This is online. It used to be in the hard copy book format, but it's online tool now. But it's downloadable. It's 15 questions, and you calculate a score and receive information about your performance. That's something you can download. The Maryland MVA also has some really good resources on their website. And they also have a comprehensive resource guide for aging drivers. So, that provides a review of safe driving tips for certain situations, addresses some health impacts on driving and vision, physical and cognitive health changes. and just some other things to consider. And you can download that free, online. You can just sort of Google the resource guide. And then we have, right, defensive driving refresher courses. These are also good ways to keep your knowledge up to date with laws and safe driving tips and techniques. They offer practical guidance to help keep you safe on the road. AAA offers these programs both in the classroom and online, and as does AARP. Having worked at AAA, I'm very familiar with their course. It is a senior specific course. It addresses the needs specifically of seniors. So I know AARP does great work too. And in many states, you can even get, a mandated insurance discount on your auto insurance premium. Many insurance companies offer it as just sort of a competitive advantage, even though it's not mandated. I know it's not mandated in Maryland, but I know insurance companies like Geico, I think they offer it. State Farm, they may offer it. But that's a great way to keep your knowledge fresh. And then I found a really good resource on the AARP website. It's called We Need to Talk, and I passed this on to some folks who are having some issues with their older loved ones. And it really helps facilitate the conversation about when a loved one should stop driving, or maybe should start to limit their driving. It's a very tough subject for most families, but it's a necessary conversation. But AARP offers a free online seminar, and it's called We Need to Talk. If you just Google that, it'll pop right up. And it provides really good tools and strategies to help you have a family conversation with aging drivers. It's free, it's online, and you can sort of do it at your own pace. So I find that to be really interesting. And then lastly, we'll look at sort of NHTSA has a list of common signs, call them red flags, to sort of look out for when your loved one should stop driving. Now, you may, I'm not going to read the list to you, but there's a number of things here, and one of the big things that I think you got to kind of be aware of is driving too slowly. As people age, the way they process information slows, and it takes them more time to process information and even execute on those decisions on what to do. Oftentimes, if people are driving way slower than the speed limit, I know people don't like when people speed, but driving too slowly is almost as dangerous as driving too fast. So, that's one. Confusing the gas for the brake. I've had some drivers who drive with 2 feet. They'll use their right foot for the accelerator and their left foot for the brake. If you grew up driving that way, it's a hard habit to break, but it's also a very dangerous way to drive, especially as you age. So, there's a whole list of things here: dents and scrapes, fender benders. People are starting to honk, incessantly at people, and it just becomes it can be a challenge. But there's another list that I think the Hartford has many of the same things. It's the visibility, it's hazard recognition, it's being able to process information quickly. Driving is primarily a thinking task. So when you think about the physical aspect of driving, it's not a lot, right? We're not moving a whole lot in the car, but that brain is constantly taking in information and processing it, and then you got to execute on those decisions that you make. So, thinking and being able to process information, and the cognitive piece is the key, really the key to safe driving. And that's it. That's all I have in conclusion. I just want to thank Catherine and Dementia Friendly America, and I'd be happy to try to answer any questions you may have.